All right. Hello and welcome to this webinar training. I'm joined by Jean-Baptiste. That's JB. He's from a WordPress company called WP Rocket. This presentation is about how to make your website faster. WP Rocket's been in the space for about 7 years, which is awesome, focused on the problem of website speeds in WordPress. First, Jean-Baptiste, thank you for coming in front of the LifterLMS and the course building community. We really appreciate it. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's great to be there as well.
I'm excited to this community here. The people on this call are really into learning and getting better, and as a kind of a culture and a community value, but also because the people who build online courses and training-based membership sites, the website is the business. It's not just a brochure for the business. So they're super focused on making sure the platform is high quality, that their customers or their learners have a great user experience, and speed plays a big part of that. And there's people in this audience who have different levels of technical ability. Some are kind of new, even brand new to WordPress. Other are advanced power users building these types of sites for clients. So it's a broad mix, and we're looking to learn from you today. We are going to be doing a LifterLMS giveaway at the end of this training. So if you're here with us live or you're watching on YouTube, we'll put a link below the YouTube video so that you can jump over and join the live webinar. We're going to be doing a $99 giveaway of one of the LifterLMS add-ons, or you can use that value against something else. If you're already a customer, we'll hook you up in a different way. So I'd encourage you to stay to the end. Also, we have a caching expert. We have a speed expert with us today. So please ask lots of questions. You can use the chat. You can also use the Q&A box. If you're watching this on YouTube, we'll keep an eye on the comments over there. And we'll save the questions to the end to really kind of get into it. So Jean-Baptiste can get into his flow. And we'll get into the Q&A. And that's really it on the housekeeping. I'll hand it over to you, Jean, and take us home. Teach us about speed, teach us about WP Rocket. How can we level up with our websites, which are the biggest asset we have as course creators?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. So the idea is really to teach about speed and not definitively about a specific tools. It's just to tell you, okay, what is caching, why speed is important, what are the information I can get, and basically how I can make my website faster and my user more happy. So let me share my screen. Just need to use this one. So perfect. Do you have my screen with
I do.
presentation? Yep. Okay, wonderful. So just brief introduction about me, but that's not really important. So I have a very long name, the full name, and that's the first time I'm going to say it, is Jean-Baptiste Marchanville, but people call me JB. So I'm the co-founder and CEO of WP Media, and at WP Media, we are focused on helping people having a faster website. And for that, we have two main products. The first one is WP Rocket. It's a caching plugin for WordPress, of course, which helps you having a faster website, and it's used by almost 1 million of websites. And
congratulations on that. That's a lot of users,
yes.
Almost 1 million. That's a lot of responsibility too.
Oh yes, each time we provide a new update, we want to make sure that everything is working perfectly for our users and to be sure that we are not slowing down their websites. And the other one is Imagify, which is a tool to allow you to optimize your images. So basically to make them smaller without losing quality. And we are optimizing about 2 million of images per day. And of course, we have a WordPress plugin for that. So about fast websites, you might ask yourself, okay, why is it important to have a fast website? The answer is really easy. It's, do you like to wait So I'm going to ask you the question, Chris. Do you like to wait, people? Do you like to wait when a website is loading?
Absolutely not.
Yeah. So congratulations, you are like everyone. We don't like, sorry, to wait. And that's why people don't like slow websites. And usually the answer when you have to wait is you close the page and you are going to another website. So for us as website owners, it's really, really important to be sure that our websites load fast. Otherwise, our visitors are going to go to the competitors, and not only our visitors, but also Google, because Google have a lot of crawlers, so that's small bots who go to your website to get the information. But if your website is too slow, Google will spend much more time to go to all your website. And it does, even if Google has a big budget, his budget is not unlimited for your website, which means that if it takes too long, he's not going to go too much on your website. So it is going to probably penalize your SEO. And also, let's imagine you are selling things on your website, which is usually the case with LMS. If people are waiting too long, they are not going to buy on your website because they are not going to trust you. If it takes 10 seconds to go on your pricing page, or when they are going to pay, they might be not happy about that and they are going to leave. So that's something which is really important to consider, is everyone want to go into a fast website. And even if our bandwidth is bigger when you access with your internet access, the websites also are bigger and bigger, and sometimes you can be on your mobile with a poor connection, and it's still very important that your website is fast all the time. And with this presentation, I'm going to try at least to teach you all the basics of how to make your website faster. So it's going to be a bit theoretically, but also I'm going to go concretely into tools, into things, concrete things in order to make your website faster. There are so many solutions, and there are a lot to make your website faster. One is something certainly the most important, is what we call a good cache policy. And I'm going to explain a little bit what is cache, because we're going to see that there are so many different type of cache, and usually people don't really know about what is cache and what are the different type of caching. We are going to do some technical things, but not too difficult, because there is a lot of different people here. And what is really the most important is to think and to try to have common sense about your website. So just to give you a small example about common sense, it's not by installing 100 of plugins or 8 performance plugins that your website is going to be faster. But let's go first into cache. And that's usually one of the biggest issue, is people always hear about cache, but okay, you need to enable cache on your website, you need to clear your cache, you need to have border cache, blah, blah, blah. But the thing is, people don't really know what is cache. And even if it's really, really easy, it can be difficult to define in a few words. So Chris, I'm going to ask you, sorry, about that. Do you know, are you able to define in like a small sentence what is cache?
For me, a cache is a snapshot of your website that's not loaded dynamically from the database. That's kind of my understanding, if I had to say it simply.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And this is the perfect answer for static cache. And this is what do caching plugins usually. But the concept of caching, it's much more bigger, in fact. And we have cache everywhere. We have cache into our phone, into our browser, into servers, into DNS, into everything. And so basically cache, I'm going to ask everyone who is listening some kind of rhetorical question. So if I'm going to ask you right now, what is the result of this multiplication? which is displayed on my screen, you're not going to know the answer right now. What you are going to do is open your calculator, type it, and see the answers. But if I'm going to ask you, so let's imagine you did the math and you have the results. And let's imagine I'm asking you in 10 seconds, what is the answer? You're going to give me the answer because you have just calculated and you have still in memory. And basically, this is cache. It's storing an information temporary. And you have stored an information of a simple equation, but usually that can be much more bigger. And what is important with cache is the temporary definition. Because tomorrow, let's imagine I'm seeing you again, I'm going to ask you the same question, you will have forget about that, and you will need to recalculate that. So this is basically what is cache, is storing temporary information, which is going to be reused later. And since website or lots of information are dynamics, usually cache are something small, like 1 day, 2 days, 1 week, something like that. And it's going to depend on the information by itself. Let's imagine you want to display on your website your number of Twitter followers. So you're going to ask Twitter, okay, how many followers do I have? And you're going to retrieve this information and store it temporarily, because you don't need to display it a different number every seconds or every minute. So you are going to store this information during 1 week or 1 day, depends on your account. And this is good because you don't need to ask all the time Twitter, and it's going to be faster. So this is the concept of cache. And there are so many kind of cache for your website. And the first one, which is very easy to understand and very easy to set up, is what we call browser cache. So what it is, it's some kind of memory into your browser. So my browser is this one. It's right now Google Chrome, but it can be a Safari, Firefox, or any kind of other browser. And every browser have information, have a small memory into it in order to display in a faster way all the websites. And so with browser cache, we are providing information to the browser to store for a specific time different files. So these files are usually what we call static files. Static files into a website are usually the big files like CSS, JavaScript, images, or videos. But let's imagine I'm going back to a website and I'm displaying the same image. There is no reason to request it again to the server, because I could have simply stored it into my memory of the browser and just display it. And that would have been much more faster, and the server would have less work. And this is what we do. And it's really simple. On static cache, on static files, we are putting some information into the server to say, okay, this file, so let's say this image or all the images, you are going to say to the browser that he need to store it for 6 months, because an image doesn't change because it has a name. So the browser will keep into his memory this image, and each time I'm going back to the website and the image is requested, it's directly the browser which is going to display it. We do that for images, CSS, JavaScript, and for that we can use 2 methods. It's a bit technical, but still important to explain a little bit. The first one, we can use expires. So expires, we give to the browser the information with a specific date. For example, with this one, with this specific expire, we say to the browser, hey, keep this file or this any kind of content until October 2042 into your memory, which means that in 2043, he won't have the file into his memory. Or we can use the cache control. So cache control, we say, okay, keep this file during 2 hours, 1 month, 6 months, 10 years, whatever. So we can have really a specific criteria. It's a date or a maximum age to keep it into the memory. And the browser is storing the information related to the name, which means that he's going to go into a website and he's going to request, for example, style.css, which is a file to display the style, the CSS of the file of the website. And he's going to keep this file and all the content. But let's imagine you are going to update this file in order to change how your website is displayed. Or let's imagine you are doing an update on your plugin, on your themes, and he's updating the content of the style.css. The issue is most of the browser will still have the content of the old file. So they won't be able to display the new one. And so we have a solution for that, and it's really easy. We use what we call versioning. So this is what we use at the end. Usually you might have seen that at the end of some files like CSS or JavaScript. There is usually this interrogation mark and a number at the end. So 1.2, 1.3. And since the name is a bit different, the browser will say, hey, I don't have this version into my cache, so I need to retrieve it, the new one. And this is why you can have new content. And that's why sometimes people say, hey, have you cleared your cache? Because I don't see the new website or the new style. And in fact, you shouldn't need to clear your cache. That's because the developer should have implemented some update on the file name. And a small warning, but all these things you won't need, we are going to see just after, you won't need to do it directly because we have some plugins to do that, and you won't need to code that. Everything is automatic though, so don't worry about that. But just a warning, theoretically, it's something which is important is you should never cache the whole HTML for the browser. Why? Because the HTML it's not directly a file, and you can't change the name of the file because it's always like index.html. And so you can't put numbers at the end because you can't really change the name, which means that if you cache the HTML and you do some update to the browser, your users won't be able to see them because they are not updated. So just keep in mind, if you want to do it manually, never cache your HTML. Sorry. Okay, a bit more technical, but still easy, and let's try to make a bit easy. Another one is what we call PHP cache. So you might know that WordPress is a CMS coded with PHP and LMS as well. And PHP is what we call an interpreted language. In fact, this means that when you are putting some PHP file on your server is going to, at each request, is going to read the PHP file and to rewrite it into some kind of different language, which is going to be compiled. And this language will be read by the machine by itself, because the server can't really execute PHP itself. You need to be rewritten into another language. And this is done by your server. The thing is, it's not very fast, because each time we are requesting a PHP file, the server is going to read all the content and rewrite it into another language. And so that's why we have what we call PHP cache. It's what we call OP code. OP cache, sorry, the OP code is the new code, which is generated by the server. And OP cache, it's really easy. And what it does, he's going to store the new language, which is the new file which is generated, in order to not generate it each time. So it's really easy. And something which is great, and that's why common sense is important. Since PHP 5.5, so this is a version of PHP, it's automatic and it's enabled by default. This is why it's always important when we are talking about performance, but for security or for any kind of different things, to always update. Today, PHP 5.5 is very old. We are at version 7.3, I think, or 7.4. I don't remember exactly. So it's, yeah, a few years ago. But when we go on some website of our customer, we still see very old version of PHP. And at the end, it makes their websites slow. So a small advice about that is always go to hosting who have really good updates on their on the server to be sure that they have the latest PHP version. This is usually the case. So yeah, just follow the recommendation you can have about good hosting. We know are working well with WP Engine, and they always have great version of PHP. So some tips, but still very important. Next one, still a bit technical, but it's going to be important. Into WordPress, so it's really more for developers. I'm going to go very fast just for information. But if you are not a developer, you're not going to use this. So WordPress have natively what we call object cache and transient. So how to explain that easily? So the idea, this is a PHP function directly created by WordPress, and you can use it into WordPress to store information into a specific area of the database. The idea, I'm going to use again the Twitter example. Let's imagine you are going to, you want to display the latest tweets of your account, of your Twitter accounts on your website. Or you want to display your, yeah, let's continue with the tweet. So you want to display the latest tweets of your accounts. What you can do is requesting Twitter API to display it. But the issue we'll have is every request, so each time a visitor is going to go to your website will go request to Twitter to display it. It's not very efficient because the idea is we want to just load what is necessary. So into WordPress, what we can do is using object cache or transient in order to store all the tweets temporarily and to say, okay, if you don't have the information, store it into WordPress for like 2 hours. And automatically, after 2 hours, your information will be deleted and you will be able to request it again. And this is great information, a great way to display quickly information. I'm going to give you an example directly into WP Rocket. So let me, okay, here it is. So here, this is a number of websites we have. In order to have this information, we need to go through all our database in order to count the number of websites, which is a long request. And we store this information into WordPress cache, and we delete it like every 6 hours because we don't need to have the exact number. So this is very useful. And let's move to what Chris told me about static cache. And this is usually what is going to have the huge impact on your website in terms of performance. So just to give you a little bit of context and example on concretely how WordPress is displaying a page. So I'm going to use this example again. So I'm going into WP Rocket website. When I'm on the home page, WordPress is going to do a lot of requests to say, hey, there is a visitor on the home page. Can you give me the home page? Can you give me the content? okay, I need to go into the database to grab all the content of the page. Is the user login? Because if he's login, I need to display something different. So as you might see and understand, there is so much things WordPress needs to do with PHP and MySQL. And this is a lot of calculation. And this can be slow, very slow, especially if you have tons of traffic or if you have tons of dynamic things. Because the more dynamics your website is, the more requests, in a way, he needs to do into the database, and the slower it can get. And so the idea is very basic. I mean, here, as you can see, we don't change that much the content. There is no reason to just display the fresh content from the database all the time a visitor is going into a website. So the idea is we ask WordPress to give us the content, so to the database, etc., and PHP, and we store it as a file, as a HTML file, and we store it into the server. So it's like we do a screenshot of the page. And now when another visitor is going to go into the website, WP Rocket or any other caching plugin, they do the same. They give the screenshot to the visitor, which means that it's instant. There is no need to load all WordPress, to load all the PHP, all the MySQL requests. It just give me the screenshot. So it's really, it's very basic, but it's working very well. But there is something which is important, and that's why caching plugin could be difficult. Is, as you might know, WordPress is still dynamic. I mean, let's imagine you are creating a new product on your website, or you are creating a new blog post. Your homepage or your blog page is going to be updated. And so if we display the screenshot is the old one. And so that's what does a caching plugin like WP Rocket is. Each time you update a content or there is something which is happening on your website, we just remove the screenshot and generate a fresh one. And so this is why it's important as well to use a caching plugin, not to code your own solution if you can do it, because it integrates all the good things in order to always be sure that there is a fresh screenshot of your website which is displayed. And also WP Rocket or other caching plugin, they don't do only that. What is important is performance is not like one thing. It's going to be a sum of big things like static cache, but also putting correctly browser cache, like all the good things we need to do to make your website faster, which is directly bundle into one plugin. And this is what we wanted to do with WP Rocket, is putting all our knowledge of performance expert, all the good things we were doing to our website manually to make it automatic. And you don't need to be a huge expert and to understand all the performance things in order to make your website faster. Because we think that this is our responsibility to take the decision for you to enable what is important for your website to make it faster. So by default, with WP Rocket, for example, when you enable, the browser cache is automatically enabled, the static cache as well. All the cache that we can set up for you are automatically enabled. But of course, there is not only WP Rocket, there are tons of other great solutions for you in order to make your website faster. And I would really recommend you to test the different solutions because you might prefer another one. And so there is WC Total Cache, there is WP Super Cache, WP Rocket, there is, a lot of other caching plugins. And, what we see is people are never happy and you will be never happy with your performance. And that's a good thing because you always want more and because Google always wants more about your website. And that's great because at the end, your users will be happy. So there is a lot of things you can do. The first thing, again, common sense, is just update everything you can, which is your web server, if you can, your version of PHP, if you can have access to that, your version of WordPress, everything. That's if your plugins are putting some updates, do it, because usually it's faster with the new updates. So every developers we know are really focused on how they can make their plugin or their themes faster. So just update. This is definitively a good thing. Also, we have seen that, I mean, you can have all the good practice on your websites, caching plugin, updates, but if you are on a poor hosting, that's not going to work, because if they have low resource, if everything is slow, it's not going to work. So be sure to use a good hosting, which is trustable, which is recommended, and this is going to be a big change for you. Another thing that WP Rocket do, but other caching, not directly cache plugins, but other plugins do, is what we call minify. I'm going probably to give you an example of what is minify. Yes, this one. Okay. So this is what we call a CSS file here. So this is code in order to display things into my website. And as you might see, everything is compressed. There is no empty lines. And this is what is minification, is removing all the comments into a code, all the blank lines, in order to make it smaller. That's definitely not a game changer, but that's small things which make your website faster. And automatically, some plugins like Auto Optimize or WP Rocket are going to retrieve all your CSS, all your files, and remove all the things which are not necessary to make them smaller at the end. And I guess you know that the more your website is small in terms of size, the faster it's going to be. And yes, another thing which is important. It's about this. About 60% of of the size of your websites is just about images, which is huge. And so if you find a way to reduce the number of images you display on your website, this is going to help a lot. But there is a good solution, because you are not going to remove the image on your website. It's important to have good images. And in fact, there are two solutions. The first one I'm going to present you is what we call lazy load. The idea I'm going to use again this website is, as you can see here, I am on the home page and I haven't scrolled yet. Which means that when I come to the website, there is no reason for the browser to load this image, all the image of my website which haven't been displayed by my browser. And this is basically what does lazy load do. It takes all the image which are not displayed because I have not scrolled yet, and it doesn't load it. And when I scroll, automatically it's going to display it. So visually, you shouldn't see anything, because each time you scroll, the script is going to put the image and to load it. But it's really a huge change, because, for example, here, when I come to this website, no image are loaded until I start scrolling. And as you can see, there is not that much image, but if you sum this one, at the end, it can change a lot. And this is really easy to implement. There are some free plugin which does that. We have released a free plugin, which is called Lazy Load by WP Rocket. And so basically, this is our lazy load, which is into WP Rocket, and we have put it for free into the repository. So you can use it. And yes, and another thing is what is really great with image, but not a lot of people know about that, is um, an image can be much more smaller in terms of size with the same quality. In terms of, if you look at the image, you won't see any difference in terms of quality, but the size will be about from 20 to 80% smaller, and which is huge, because let's imagine you have about, I don't know, it's huge, but sometimes we've seen people with that on their website. You have just 10 megabytes of images on your website, on the home page of your website. And if we can reduce it to 5 megabytes, it's a huge change, especially if you are on mobile with a poor connection. 10 megabytes is very, very long to load. And this is what we do with our other plugin. It's Imagify. And in one click, we automatically optimize all your images. So you have two solutions. One is, let's imagine you have already a website and you have already a tons of images, and we have what we call the bulk optimization. So in one click, we're going to go through all your library and optimize your images. And after, which is great, is each time you are going to upload a new image, Imagify will automatically optimize it. And something, I mean, it was new a few years ago, but let's say it's still new, is there is different kind of image format. You might know about JPEG, PNG, but there is another one, which is here since many years, which is called WebP. WebP is a format which is created by Google. It's a great format because it allows you to have much more smaller images compared to JPEG. But there is one big issue with that, is not all browser can display them. For example, Google Chrome, of course, can display it. But if you go with Safari, Safari won't be able to display the WebP. So you may have seen, you may understand the issue is, let's imagine you are displaying WebP on your website. People with Safari won't be able to see them. So that's what we do with Imagify, and all the plugin as well do that, is we create a WebP of your image, and depending of the browser, we display the WebP or the JPEG or the PNG if it's Safari or any other browser which doesn't understand and which is not able to display the WebP. That's all about image. And something also important, and it's still about common sense, and it's always like that, or it's most of the time like that, is don't be careful with the plugins you are using on your website. One rule which is important is, if you don't need it, if you're not using the plugin, just disable it, just remove it, because there is no reason to have one plugin enabled on your website if you don't use it. Because most of the time, it's not 100% true, but most of the time, plugins will add CSS, JavaScript files on your website, which means that this is files which need to be loaded by the browser. These files need to be loaded by your users. And if they are not useful, there's no reason to load them. So be sure to remove them and to be careful with the plugins you want to use, because everything has a cost, and especially with performance. So the more thing you are going to have, the bigger in a way your website is going to be. So I would recommend you, when you are using a plugin, and if you don't know which one you should use, to maybe try 2 or 3 different ones, and see also if there is a difference in terms of performance. And I'm going to show you some tools in order to see that. Another thing which is important, which can have a big impact, is a CDN. There is a lot of people talking about CDN, but not all people know about what it is. Concretely, a CDN, it's like usually like cache. So a CDN is very easy. It's servers are replicated. In fact, your content, your static files, CSS, JavaScript images are replicated into a lot of different servers all around the world, which allow your visitors to be closer to your content. So as you have guessed with my accent, I'm from France. If I'm going to a website which is hosted in United States, even if the fiber is fast, my browser will need to load all the files from US, and it's long. It's fast, but it's still long. And so the idea of a CDN is the content will be replicated in Paris, in Europe, in Asia, etc. So now when I'm going to the same website, even if it's still located in US, the CDN will load the content directly from a smaller, a closer location, Paris, for example, or anywhere in Europe. And this is very, very helpful. And we can see huge difference between people using a CDN and people who are not using one, if they have traffic all around the world, or even in USA. USA is big, so that can make a big difference. And this is a good transition on how you can. I mean, performance is important, but we need to measure it in any case, because if you just look at your website, you're not going to see if it's fast. So you need to correctly measure and understand how it works. There is usually 3 tools we recommend, especially for beginner and intermediate. The first one is ping-down tools, which is very good in order to get your loading time. Another one is GTmetrix, which gives you some information about your website, about things you can improve on your performance. And the last one is DareBoost, which is also providing some advices on how to make your website faster. Something is really important is be very careful on how you are reading performance grade and how you are interpreting them and how you read the loading time. Because I guess most of you are using PageSpeed to measure your loading time. And even if it's really a great tool, it's complicated to analyze it. And most of the time, the advice that they are giving are not really, you can't make them work. And it's very, very difficult. And even if it's a great tool, it can be stupid, like all the tools, in fact. So you need to be sure to understand it, to know what you can do. And I'm going to give you just a few examples on how you can interpret it, and to be sure to be very careful about all the things, because you need to read everything. So this is a test from Pingdom about a French website. And as you can see, so this is important to note, this is the loading time. When you see that, usually you can say, okay, this website is pretty fast. We think that ideally your website should load under 1 second, but it's very, very complicated, especially if it's quite big. So if it's between 1 and 2, we say it's okay. So by looking at this loading time, we can say, okay, this website is quite fast. But there is something you might see, and I hope you see it, is the page size. This number, almost 14 megabytes, is way too big for a website. Usually we recommend to not go over 2 or 3 megabytes, maximum 5. So 14 is huge. So this tool, Pingdom, is using a fiber to go to the website. So it's not long, but let's imagine your bandwidth is like 1 megabytes per second. with 14 megabyte size, you will need just 14 seconds just to display all the content, which is huge. So be very careful with numbers and try to analyze everything. And we are going to just go into the details of this result. So with Pingdom, if you go below when you have done the test, so it's something which is really interesting is they give you the size by the content type. And as you've seen here, the image, hello, are 95% of the total size of the image. So if they just use lazy load or optimize their images, they could reduce that to, I don't know, 80%, something like that. And they would make their website very fast in almost, yeah, something very easy and fast to do. Another thing which is important, and this people don't know usually about that. So when you launch a test on your website, Pingdom or the other tools are going to give you all the requests. So this is all the things which is done by your website to display it. And as you can, I'm going to zoom a little bit. I don't know if it's working. No, it's not working. As you might see here, there is a lot of requests which are done to Facebook, to Instagram, to Facebook again, to Facebook again, to Facebook again, oh, again to Instagram. And this is very long to do because it's another request to do. And when it's not on your server, there is a lot of HTTP thing to do, like open a connection, do a DNS request, and this is long. And so I've highlighted this. So just to display a number of I guess this is to display a like box into the website. It takes almost, it takes 500 milliseconds just to display that, which is way long. So this is something important I want to say about performance is it's always balance. So yes, you can display this like box, but it will affect your users. So you might think about another solution to display this, which would make things much more faster. So I gave you the example of having a transient or storing this into a database or something else. And this would have a huge impact on your website. What's more, something, so this is GT metrics and something important I want to show, and this is we have only 2 slides, so we are at the end of this presentation. When you do a GT metrics test, he's going to give you a grade, but more important, at the end, he's going to give you a lot of recommendation. And this is important to read them, basically. And because when you click on each items here, this is going to be displayed and with more content, because you can say, okay, I need to, I think this is the example like I take. I need to leverage border caching. What does that mean? That means that the resource you are loading they don't have border cache information. So basically that means that the server is not telling the browser to save it into this memory, which is bad. But if, and I hope this is, yes, but if we open this information, we can see that the first files are about the website, so elysee.fr. And it's okay. So this need to be changed. But if we look at the end, I don't know if you see, oh, sorry. If you look at the end, you will see that there is a lot of other requests which don't have browser cache, but since it's not on your server, you don't have any access to that. So you can't have it. And what is fun, but it's required is, you see here there is Google Analytics, which has a 2 hours border cache configuration. And if, for example, if you do a page speed test with your website and you have Google Analytics enabled on your website, he's going to give you a bad grade and a bad feedback about browser caching, which is not well configured. just because you are loading Google Analytics. So that's why it's really important to open the information and to read. So here, if I would be the owner of this website, I would fix all the things which is related to my server because I have the access. I can change it, but never forget that if there is a resource which is not on your server, you don't have access to it. So you can't control any kind of performance thing. So it's important to load the resource on your server. It's not always possible, but if you don't, you need to know that you can't control them. So it's important to notice. And yeah, that was my last slide. So yeah, thank you for your attention. And we have, I guess, sometimes to answer any question you like about performance or whatever.
Jean-Baptiste, that was amazing. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. And you're an excellent teacher, which means a lot because it's a complicated topic. And if somebody's newer to tech, there's a lot of principles, which you did a great job with. So thank you.
Stop my sharing screen with you.
We've got some questions in the audience and I've got a bunch of questions for you as well. I was wondering, let me just start. Nassim's question is, do you have a caching standard installation parameters to implement for a LifterLMS website? And I shared in the chat a link to our documentation around caching FAQs. And I think the biggest thing that our users run into is if they have caching problems, it's usually around the dynamic content. And what they hear is their customers saying, I can't log in, or my login's going to weird places, or the password reset is messing up. So could you speak to that and just provide some more clarity around like that? I know you're not super familiar with LifterLMS, but where do people get in trouble? Is that more from like cheaper, more economical hosting that's like caching everything, or is it more likely improperly configured cache plugins? I mean, I know it depends, but what are your thoughts?
Most of the time that would be about caching plugin. And the answer is really easy. That's because the caching plugin is providing a screenshot, which is static. And if we don't configure the caching plugin, or if the caching plugin is not coded in a way that we know, some page shouldn't be cached, never, like another page on your website or a login page, because if you store a screenshot of a login page, it's not going to work because it needs to be dynamic. This is where I'm entering to my website. So what we do, so I don't know exactly the compatibility with LifterLMS and WP Rocket, but what we do is we always try to work very well with the creators of other plugin to make sure that we automatically exclude this kind of pages from WP Rocket cache. This is, for example, what we do with WooCommerce. All the pages are automatically excluded, so there is nothing to do. But also, sometimes we can't be compatible directly with everyone. And the solution is, there is two solutions, which is quite basic, is enabling logged in cache, which means that everyone who is going to be logged in or who is going to be connected to the website will have a different cache, which is going to be his home cache. So that's going to be a good solution. And the other one is you have the ability to exclude pages from the cache. So this page won't be cached at all. And that would solve the solution.
That's great. LifterLMS has its own e-commerce system, but it also integrates with WooCommerce if people want to use that. Can you describe like what parts of WooCommerce, like what WooCommerce type pages? You said checkout pages. Is there anything else that should not be cached that's in WooCommerce?
Yeah, there is, for example, the account pages usually, and yeah, the easier thing is, and you think is all the checkout, and like if your order is confirmed. So let's imagine your order is confirmed, but you have the previous order which is displaying. Sorry, it's not going to work. So this is automatically excluded. And a good thing about WooCommerce is they display there usually by default the your order, your basket directly, it's directly dynamic. So, and even if the page is cached, it's still dynamic. So there is nothing to worry about.
I see. That makes sense. What is it like? Help the users understand when they contact a plugin company, whether it's Lifter or somebody else, for support, and support says, clear your cache and see if it goes away. What's going on in that dynamic there? What is that? What's happening?
Yeah, because it's going to be a bit technical, but let's try to make it easy.
Well, why should somebody clear their cache before they contact support for a software product, for a WordPress product?
Yeah, so I mean, I agree, Jennifer. Me as well. But I do the same. Yeah, so because we want to make sure. Sometimes people update things, but they don't use the versioning of the files to make sure that things are updated. Maybe it happens that some caching plugins have some issues, and sometimes it's happened to WP Rocket as well, that the cache is not correctly removed. So we just want to make sure that everything is dynamic. So this is why we usually do that.
And Lifter people, because the website can look very different, whether or not you're a visitor, a user, and you're enrolled in like a course or membership, we often teach people how to test in like an incognito browser, or even a different browser, so that they know what their website's like for different types of users. Does an incognito browser not have caching in it at all? I'm just curious.
No, it does have. It depends. So there is two main reasons. The first one is when you are going to use incognito mode, especially with WordPress, you won't be logged in, which means that like 90% of the time you won't into WP Rocket or other caching plugins, you won't have the option to have cache when you are logged in, which means that if you're doing things on your caching plugin settings and you go on your website, you'll be logged in and you won't have the cache because the plugins will detect it. So that's why we recommend, or the people recommend, to go into incognito, so to be sure that you are not logged in into your website. And the other thing is, since it's a fresh border, you won't have any kind of border cache, which means that all the CSS or the JavaScript won't be stored. And so you will be sure to have the new content.
So it's super fresh. That makes a lot
Yeah.
of sense. I think you kind of answered it, but I just want to make sure I understand. I know that it affects other people's questions too. If there's dynamic content, like for example, WooCommerce has the My Account page, and LifterLMS has a same thing. We call it the student dashboard. Should those pages never be cached, or is there like a user specific cache for those pages, or what are you saying there?
Yeah,
And people could be like, for Lifter, that page has so much dynamic content, their progress bars are constantly changing and stuff. Or do they just need to let go of caching those pages, or is there some kind of cache opportunity?
yeah, user cache would be ideal, but up to a way it would work. But if it's highly dynamic, I mean, if you, in fact, cache is useful when you go multiple time into the same page, which is the same content. But if every time you do something, the cache is cleared, you need to regenerate it. So it doesn't make sense to have cache, because each time it's going to be removed and you go back, extra. So if you know that your page is going to change all the time, there is no reason to cache it. And at the end, it will be slower, because to generate the cache, it's extra calculation. So for these specific things, we would recommend to disable it. But if it's a classic account page, which doesn't change that much, yeah, just enable logged in cache.
Logged in cache. Gotcha.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you about, it's sort of in the, using an SEO plugin as an example. If you install an SEO plugin, there's more to do for SEO than just installing and activating the SEO plugin.
Yeah.
How does it work with, using that example, how does it work with WP Rocket? if I install it and activate it, what do I get? And then if there's work to do, what are the most important first steps where I can get the
Mm,
most value quickly?
okay. Yeah. So we try to do the opposite. I mean, because SEO is you need to take action and you can't really automate it things. I mean, you can, but with WP Rocket, we took the idea to um, follow strictly WordPress philosophy, one of the WordPress philosophy, which is called decision, not action. So we think that and WordPress thing, and we just follow that the more option you give to a user, the more he's going to be frustrated, because at a point he won't know if he needs to enable this option, and he will be afraid to break his website. So he won't know, and he will think, okay, that's a good product, but I'm not able to use it fully because I can't enable this option because I don't know what it is, but it might make my website faster. So we took the decision to try to reduce at the maximum the option, which means that when you enable WP Rocket, basically we say about 70 to 80% of the good performances practice and of the option of WP Rocket are automatically enabled. So basically, you just have to enable WP Rocket. Of course, there is some extra things we can't really enable by default because that could cause some glitches or some extra configuration. And for this, you can do it. But if you don't know, if you're really afraid of, you just enable WP Rocket, and this is going to work from scratch.
That's awesome. So it does a lot out of the box just by turning
Yes,
it
out
on.
of the box, yeah.
And help people understand, you touched on it, but the difference between what a hosting company does in terms of caching versus what you do with your website and
Mm,
a plugin like WP Rocket. Like
yeah,
if I'm like for example, like WP Engine and Kinsta or managed WordPress hosting is very popular in this community.
yeah,
Although, and we also have people on more economical shared hosting accounts. Like, how do they think about? Because sometimes there's a shifting responsibility. Like,
yeah.
well, what should they look to their hosting company? What should they look to the caching plugin? And then what should they look to the tools that they're using to be able to do with performance in mind? Like,
Mm,
whose fault is it? Is kind of like the negative way to say it.
yeah, yeah. It's usually what we see is hosting company don't do that much caching because they can't really interact with WordPress. Like they can't really know when a page is updated or all the things they need to clear. So usually the most common technique they do is they are using some kind of micro caching. Like all the content is cached for about 10 seconds, 30 seconds, which has a huge impact, and that's working well. And when there is this, so a good example, WP Engine, I don't know if they are using this, but they have their own static cache system. But we have worked with them to be sure that we are fully compatible and optimized for to work with WP Engine. And we are the only caching plugin which is allowed on their platform. And so what we do there is we disable our static cache feature when we detect it's a website running on WP Engine platform, which means that they can use the benefits of the cache of WP Engine and all the benefits of the other optimization provided by WP Rocket. But you're right. That's usually what we see. The difficulties is the hosting say, "Hey, we have cache." Caching plugins say, "Yeah, but we have cache as well," and it's always complicated. So usually we recommend if your hosting solution have some built-in cache, we would recommend to use them because because we can easily disable our caching system and that won't interfere with their solution. So it's better to use them directly. And on our side, we just disable caching and we do all the other optimization system.
How does an expensive hosting company help with speed? I mean, like when they increase the price of your plan or they say you need to buy more, what are you actually getting at the hosting level?
I'm not sure. Could you say it again, the
Like
question?
if you get more traffic and concurrent users,
Yeah.
and your hosting company tells you you need to get a bigger plan, like I guess what I'm saying is what does the caching plugin do with when traffic increases
Mm,
versus what does the hosting need to do to make
yeah.
sure the speed is good?
Yeah. Yeah, it's difficult to directly answer because the hosting companies will do so many different things. And let's say basically most of the hosting companies don't have caching, so they just host your website, but that's all. It's up to you to optimize it. And what is difficult is usually they will bill you, mostly manage hosting, on the request you do, or on the PHP request mostly. And if you are able to reduce this by having a caching plugin, you can handle more traffic, uh, but without a bigger hosting or a bigger plan, because you are reducing a lot your PHP requests, because all the requests are cached.
That's great. One of the things, can you help us understand why sometimes the WordPress admin is slow? And even if that's slow, that doesn't mean the front end of our website is slow. Can you talk
Yeah.
about that?
Because there is no cache on the admin first.
And no,
Uh,
that's just not, that just doesn't exist, right? Or it does exist.
No, I don't know. I think it should exist, but we don't really recommend it because everything is highly dynamic. Right? You
Yeah,
are creating content or you're reading new content, so this can't be really cached. And usually the admin is where everything is loaded, like all the option of all your plugins, all the database information. So that's why it's really, really slow sometimes. And yeah, there is a huge amount of MySQL requests all the time. Like for example, there is a when you are in most of the pages, there is what we call what is called, sorry, by WordPress heartbeat. So this is a request which is done by your browser to the server, like every 30 seconds to refresh the content. So for example, this is why sometimes if you're on your home page, you will see new comments display automatically. That's because WordPress is doing requests all the time, and this can make your admin slower because there is all the time request on it.
can you, I just put a link in the chat for everybody who's watching this. You have, WP Rocket has a plugin called Heartbeat Control. What
Yep.
does that free plugin do?
Yeah. So the same, this is a feature we have into WP Rocket, like lazy load, but we did exclude it. And we give you the ability to disable this heartbeat because this can affect negatively your your website, because it does a lot of requests, MySQL requests. So it can be really useful to have it. I mean, to have heartbeat if you want to display the latest comment on your admin, or you want always be to have all the information. But sometimes it doesn't make sense, and you can simply disable it with this free plugin.
That's cool. And I wanted to ask you, I want to make sure I understood you correctly. Um, your lazy load plugin,
Yeah.
which there's a link to that in the chat as well. Does that retroactively fix images you've already uploaded?
Yes. Yes, of course, because it's displayed on your front end. So whatever when you did upload it, we don't change the image. In fact, we do change the HTML of your website on each pages. So yes, everything will be applied.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like that's the thing that really gets people in trouble is the images. But
Oh yes.
I wanted to ask you something here. I've got where to go? I had my while I'm finding it, I had a question. Oh, here it is. I'm going to share my screen with you. All right, let me get out of that. A lot of course creators, get this up so I can talk at the same time. We didn't get that great of a score for LifterLMS.com. But one of the things I wanted to ask you about is related to video. Course creators make a lot of videos. There's lesson videos. Wistia, Vimeo Pro are very popular. People use YouTube videos as well. And if I come down here in my report, right here, here's Wistia Like, what can we do? Like, when we're using so much video, what can we do to increase speed?
Yeah. Um, so we do have a solution for YouTube, which is we are lazy loading the videos. So basically, we don't load them until you are on it. So this helps a lot. Unfortunately, I don't think, yeah, we are not yet compatible with Wistia. I don't think so.
Yeah.
Which means that right now you don't have any automated solution to do that. But yeah, that would be yeah, maybe using, yeah, I don't know, honestly. Yeah.
Well, like, just so people understand, like, I mean, we
Ah,
always recommend that people should not host their own videos like on their own server. So people use Vimeo
yeah,
Pro or Wistia or
yeah,
YouTube,
yeah.
but
But
still
if,
an embed comes at a cost, right?
yeah, but if you have a look, it's in fact what is long from your screen. It's not the video itself; it's the JavaScript file.
Okay. And this is one I can't control because it's Wistia's, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is what we do implement. And I'm going to ping our team about that, is we have features into WP Rocket, which allow you to retrieve external JavaScript files to load them directly from your server. And that's going to be much more faster. That's what we do so far for Facebook and for Google Analytics. We don't do yet for Wistia, but I'm going to ping our team if that's something we could do, because that would help your website a lot.
That's great. Why is I saw this one? The reason I bring this one up is, so this is like a search. So we have our documentation portal. We built it ourselves, and the reason I'm bringing it up here is some course creators or people who have membership sites, especially big ones, they want to do more advanced like searching so people can find courses and training based on certain topics.
Yeah.
The searching is like a heavy thing to like query the database.
Yep.
Any tips just around, just if you have a search or something that's doing a query of some kind, how to
Yeah.
speed that up?
Yeah. Don't use WordPress for that.
Use
No,
Google.
honestly,
Yeah.
I'm not really familiar with that. I'm not. Yeah, I don't have a lot of experience, but WordPress by itself is not efficient, and it's not a tool for searching. I know that on our side we are using an external service which is called Algolia.
Yeah.
It's a great startup which allow you to to implement a very fast search into your website. And I would definitively recommend using this kind of service, which would directly query all your content, all your database, store it, and allow you to search into an instant way. Of course, you will need to load their JavaScript, but the search would be fast and efficient, which is something which can't be really done by WordPress itself, because it's not a technology to search things.
That's awesome. Um, I wanted to ask you, the lazy load plugin that you have, is that, can you use that without using WP Rocket? Or
Yeah,
you, so
yeah, for sure.
it's
Yeah,
something people can just install and get started with right away,
yeah,
right?
and for free, just install and you have lazy load.
That's awesome. And you said, and the heartbeat control one is another thing you give away for free.
Yeah, the same. Yeah. Yeah. So that basically what we try to do is taking some core features of WP Rocket and putting them as free plugins in order to provide some good experience to users. And if they want more, they can go back to WP Rocket, for example. But not everyone want to change their caching plugin. So if they want to stay with their other caching plugins but want to use lazy load, we provide them this ability to do it.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Nigel's saying, thank you for the great information. Yeah, this is a treasure chest of information. Is there, I'm just thinking of people who really get into wanting to level up on speed. Do you guys have any community resources like a Facebook group or
Yep.
anything that,
Yep.
while you're getting
Um,
that, maybe just drop in the chat.
Yeah, I
Uh,
just need to. I don't go that much on Facebook, but yeah, we have. I'm going to search it right now. We have a Facebook group where we share a lot, and our users are sharing a lot about performance. Yeah, we have this group. We have 7,000 users, where a lot of people are talking about performance. And on our blog, we try to share a lot of content related to performance and how to make your website faster.
that is awesome. Um, you covered a lot of this, but I just want to circle back to it. What are your top tips, like low hanging fruit, to speed up the website? Like, what if somebody's going to someone's a beginner at speed, they're not super technical, what should they do?
For me, I might be biased. I might have some bias, but install a caching plugin definitively. If you don't have, just do that, and that's going to be a huge change for your website. And then after, you can dig more to look for the perfection, on the performance. But it's going to be like a big, huge changer. I mean,
Yeah, that's awesome. And should people get in the habit of trying to, like, do you know this website Tiny PNG?
yep,
Like, I've gotten in the habit most of the time, as long as I'm not being lazy, where I will run an image through there before I put it on my website.
yeah.
Is that like extra work if I were to just use like something like the lazy load plugin, or is that a good practice to get into?
Yeah, so that's two different things. So tiny PNG is going to reduce the size of image, and lazy load is going to not load them, or
Okay.
just load them when you need. So we would recommend you to do both, and that's why also we have a Imagify, and I think tiny PNG should have a plugin, WordPress plugin as well. Is when you have the WordPress plugin, the plugin is going to do this basically. Uh, go through TinyPNG of Imagify automatically and optimize them. So if you can do both, that's better.
And just so I'm super crystal clear, Imagify is your plugin as well,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
the WP Rocket and Imagify, and just what does the paid version of Imagify do?
So it does the same. The only difference is in terms of quota, how many images you can optimize per month. So
So it's
for
unlimited kind of thing, or more?
yes,
Yeah,
more.
yeah.
For free, you have 25 megabytes, which is about 250 images per month, which is usually what, if you have a small website without a lot of images, that's much more, that more than enough. But if you have like huge amount of images every month, you need to pay more in order to have more quota available.
That's super helpful. And I put a link to that in the chat. That's imagify.io.
Yeah. And we have a WordPress plugin, so you can directly install the WordPress plugin and try optimizing your images for free.
Cool. And that one is retroactive as well,
Yes.
Imagify.
Yeah.
Cool.
In one click with bulk optimization, this is going to go through all your existing images of your media library and optimize them. And if you select it, display them as WebP.
Oh, wow, that's cool. And what happens if somebody visits on Safari? Is there a backup version or
Yeah.
something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We detect that it's Safari, and if it's Safari, we display the previous version, the JPEG, the JPEG version, but which has been optimized.
Wow, that is super cool. Awesome. Let's see. There was a comment on the YouTube live stream, and Susan was saying that cache can impact your cache, so good idea to get it right.
Yeah,
So I mean,
exactly.
it's important. Do you know any of those statistics or just general rules of thumb? Like sometimes you hear people say things like your conversion rate, the more second somebody has to rate, conversion rates start going down by whatever percentage. Do you know any of those kind of data?
Yeah, we have read studies about that. Like Amazon did some tests about like if I do add 200 milliseconds, how many saves do I do less? There is a huge number. There is a lot of numbers about that. On our side, we have read them. We think they really matters. but we haven't really tested. But what we know is people don't want to wait, and we see that, I mean, if it's too slow, we're going to leave the website and we're not going to buy it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big point. And I think one of the things that gets especially this audience in trouble is they're often working on a laptop, building websites, making their videos in the home office with good internet and all
Mm.
this. But if somebody's taking the course on a cellular connection or in another somewhere part of the world or that doesn't have the fastest internet, it's a totally different experience of your website.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and we don't think that sometimes. Exactly. You're on your office and everything is fast, and you are very happy about your website, but then you don't imagine that sometimes there are people with very poor internet connection, and it's hell, and it's not loading at all. So they're going to see someone else.
I mean, I'm 41 years old, man. So I remember when a web page used to load like one
Yeah,
line at
immediately. Yeah, I
a
remember
time.
as well.
Yeah. Is there anything we can do by like network or whatever? So like, is there anything that WP Rocket does or any other tips you have for conditionally if somebody is on a slow or cellular connection? Like I think some of the video hosting companies like degrade the quality depending upon how strong the connection is. Is
Yeah.
there anything else like that that either is happening automatically or that you recommend that we do?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's something we can't have control on, because that's really on the, let's say, on the server and on the hosting. Yeah, it's not really possible to do that. It would be technically possible, but yeah, it's very useful, in fact, for huge files like a video. But if you have an image, if it's one image, it won't change. But yeah, that's would be a great solution, a great idea to implement as well.
I see some people get into trouble with the page builders where they get excited and there's all these animations and background images and parallax and stuff. And one of the things, I'm not necessarily the best example of it, but sometimes I remove I've used Beaver Builder. There's that you can remove I'll remove an entire row on mobile or
Yeah,
like remove the background image on mobile just to keep that kind of stuff in mind.
exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Jean-Baptiste, I want to thank you for coming on the webinar here. Vidya just has a question here. Do you have any special deal for LifterLMS users? And it's fine if you don't. You've already given us the special deal of this
I
training.
haven't prepared anything, but
Yeah.
I'm going to put my email, and if you want something, you can email me, and I will find you a special deal for you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Appreciate that. And we're gonna add this, to our to the areas of our website where we talk about speed. Vidya says thanks so much for dropping your email in there. It's cool. You're a lot like us, where you're in like high contact with the customers and you feel their needs and their friction points and stuff like that. So Vidya says they're definitely signing up. Um, we are gonna pull our giveaway. Yep, we just pulled it. It was Jack Johnson. So you're the winner of the free $99 LifterLMS add-on, or you can use it as a coupon code. We put a message in the chat. You can just email us at team@lifterlms.com and we'll hook you up. So congratulations on that, Jack. Jean-Baptiste, thank you so much for coming. WP Rocket, that's over at wp-rocket.me. Is that right?
That's
And
perfect.
you can also get started with their the lazy load plugin, which
Yep.
is called lazy load dash optimize images. That's what it's titled. So you can
Yeah.
find it in
Or
your
you
WordPress
just
search there
search lazy load by WP Rocket into Google, and you should find it.
and you'll get it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. It was really nice. All good?
Uh,